is now 6:30, and I will call the Monday, April 30th Planning Commission meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, staff and commissioners. Excuse me. Our first item on this evening's agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from staff or the commission on this evening's agenda?
I have one minor change. If we can move item number 5, updates, and switch that to item number 6. Move item number 6 up to item number 5.
I don't think we need a motion for that.
Okay.
All right. If there's no other
I'll move approval as
motion,
amended.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Our second item on this evening's agenda is approval of the minutes from the April 9th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any changes from those minutes? No changes? I would stand for a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries.
Abstained, by the way.
Our third item on this evening's agenda is a public hearing for Dar es Salaam for a green space variance and conditional use permit for a proposed religious institution / community center and for a alternative parking to allow fewer parking stalls than the ordinance standard located at 190 River Ridge Circle South. And presenting this evening is Ms. Garros as she approaches the podium.
Thank you for folks in the audience. There is a sign-up sheet on the back table. There's also, if you don't get a chance to sign in and want to speak, there's a sign-up sheet here at this podium too for when you speak. And it's a matter of leaving your information so that we can include your comments in the minutes. And then if you want email information back, we can get that to you accurately. So just wanted to let you know that's there. Thank you. Commissioners?
Thank you, Ms. Garros.
This application is a public hearing for Dar es Salaam, and they are seeking a conditional use permit and also a green space variance. And there are a couple of items. Dar es Salaam has been operating in the city for a number of years, but at different locations, and they have been looking for a site to have a permanent home for quite some time. And this site is one that is available, and they're interested in purchasing this site. And to do that, they need to change the use. The property was approved in the property was approved a number of years ago, and it's a different use. It was, I believe, for Minnesota School of Fine Arts. And what the applicant would like to have is religious institution. They have part of their application is prayer hall. And in order to do that, they need a conditional use permit in the B3 or general business zoning district. So that is the primary application. In addition to that, there is a conditional use permit process that is available and called out in the ordinance for what is termed alternative parking. And those are provisions under which, through a conditional use permit, the city council can ultimately approve more or lesser parking standards for a use. It was intended to apply to the reuse of property. And if you bring in studies, national studies, particular parking studies and documentation that you need more parking or lesser parking than the ordinance parking schedule calls for, the council then can approve that through a conditional use permit. So they are seeking that as well, and that is to allow the existing site, which has 71 stalls, to provide the parking for their needs. The last item is an item that staff had suggested to the applicant that they make application for, and that is a variance for green space. The subject site is large. There is a lot of green space out there now. However, when we deal with assembly uses, those tend to have the highest parking requirements in the ordinance because you have the most number of people usually associated with assembly. So it's possible that they need to provide even more parking on their site. And so staff, in talking with the city attorney, from a staff perspective, we felt that it's important to have parking on site to accommodate all of the members and for the various services that Dar es Salaam will have, so that that be on site. And if that comes at a need to reduce green space below 25%, we felt that that made sense. So staff had suggested the applicant make application for the green space variance. The subject site they're looking at is at 190 River Ridge Circle South. And on the map to the left, that is the subject site. I'll have you note that pretty much everything within the vicinity is of the same zoning district. There is no residential within this area. And the subject site itself consists of 2 separate lots. They were divided before the building was constructed, the primary building was constructed. There was a waiver of subdivision that was done in the 1980s, and it split the property into 2 parcels, the northerly parcel and the southerly. However, then when the building permit came in, years later, they provided a survey that showed it all as one piece, and actually now part of the building encroaches in this area here over that common lot line. So one of the conditions that staff is recommending and that we've talked to the applicant about is recombining the north and south piece back to one parcel again for development purposes, and that will also take care of any future or title issues that they may have in building code issues. This site, or this map, gives you a close-up site aerial view, and this is from Dakota County's website and their aerial photography. You can see the primary building is here. And then there are 2 outbuildings, smaller buildings to the north, and then they have 71 parking stalls currently on the site. For Dar es Salaam, they are proposing only interior remodeling. They're not proposing to make any exterior building changes, and they're not proposing any changes at all in either of these 2 outbuildings. Their current membership, or let me back up for a minute, where they are currently operating out of is a site at 603 Travelers Trail, and they received conditional use permit approval in 2011 to have their religious institution use at that location. And what they're proposing to do is to move here to a facility that they can own as opposed to rent, looking at similar types of uses to prayer service, or 2 prayer areas, one for women and one for men. Also to have classes on weekends for K through 6 education, and then in addition to that, to have area for office and some eating areas for the students and the folks that are there. Would not be any type of, not a restaurant or anything of that sort, more of a lounge type of a thing. With that, their current membership, as they indicated, is about 100 members. For prayer services, what they have is they have prayer services 5 times per day, and those last for about 20 minutes. And people can come to any of those services that they want to, and generally they have between 5 and 15 people at any one session during the day. They offer, or they will be open between 8 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock p.m. at night, 7 days a week, and they, for their largest service is Friday afternoon, starting at noon, and that service is an hour and a half, and that's when they have their most attendees typically for what they have. And the staff that's traditionally on site is made up of some paid and some volunteers, generally in the form of teachers and administrators, and they have eight folks that do that work. As far as internal changes to the building, they did submit their plans showing what they would like to do. This is the main level floor plan, and this is where they have the 2 prayer halls. The women's prayer area is here, and the men's prayer area is here. Then they will have offices in between. There is also some area for storage, restrooms, etc. And then they have a large existing library or open space area, and that will continue to be the case. There is the main lobby, so folks come in from the southerly side of the building, main lobby, and then you can, there is a stair set, and the next plan is the lower level plan. And this, as you see on the lower level, also has a similar library recreation area. And they are proposing, there are existing tenants in part of the building, so they, as I understand it, will be allowed to finish out their lease. And there are some existing tenants that are in these locations. And then in addition to that, there will be primarily the classrooms in this area of the site, and then mechanical space. On the third floor, this is where they have the staff lounge and student lunch area, if you will. Computer labs and conference rooms and offices are proposed. There is an existing beauty salon, one-chair beauty salon that's in this location that is an existing tenant. As far as the site plan is concerned, and really the main issue from a staff perspective is really related to parking. And that's a similar case. As the Planning Commission is aware, we have 3, 4, 5 applications for similar types of uses in the Burnsville every year, probably for the last 3 or 4 years. They are conditional uses, which means they're uses that are deemed to be permitted by the ordinance, but subject to conditions to minimize impacts to the adjacent properties and neighborhood. With that, in terms of the site plan, initially when the applicant came in, they wanted to, and have made application for that conditional use permit for the alternate parking. And what they would like to do, or what they had intended to do, was to use the existing site parking, which is 71 spaces, to accommodate their use. With the application of the zoning ordinance parking standards, based on their plans, their occupancy, and what is proposed, they need to have 196 parking stalls. So 71 stalls is deficient. When we advised the applicant of that, they had come back with a revised plan showing additional parking that could be handled on site. And they're showing first the additional parking on the southerly part of the site, and then added additional parking potential on the northerly side of the site. If all of these spaces are constructed, that gets them to 126 parking stalls, and they're still 70 stalls short. What they have proposed and what they've indicated to staff is that they've been trying to work with adjacent property owners to allow them to have joint parking facilities. The ordinance does allow this, provided certain standards are met, and those are that the adjacent or off-site parking needs to be within 400 feet of the boundary of the subject site. In addition to that, there has to be some type of written agreement, usually in the form of a parking easement for those spaces. And the required amount of parking for both uses needs to be provided or accommodated for. As far as we heard tonight, we have not seen yet a parking agreement, but the applicant has indicated that they're looking at other properties in order to provide that. On their most recent plan, I know it's a little bit difficult to see here, try to enlarge it, but they were looking at working with the Better Business Bureau, which is directly to the west of their subject site, to allow some off-site parking for up to 70 vehicles in their parking lot. That still allows, there still is excess parking based on the ordinance for the office facility that's here. And if they were able to get the parking agreement for 70 stalls here, then in total they would meet their parking requirement for 196 stalls. This is just an aerial that gives you a little bit better idea of what the site looks like. If they are to have parking joint parking in this location. There's currently not any type of access between the two properties. And from the city engineer's standpoint, they're indicating, and we have also done this before, that there should be some type of a walkway provided. And if it's not directly between the two, they can also construct within the right-of-way, but they would need a permit from the city to do that. River Ridge Circle is a city street. And then there are also some additional considerations, which we'll talk about here in a minute. In terms of the development and summary, they are looking to, and this is considering the plan that has the two additional parking areas on it, that they would be increasing the impervious surface from 39 to 56%, which is allowed. The existing green space on the site is 61%. The ordinance requirement is 25%. With the two additional parking areas shown and what's existing out there, they have 44% green space. We do not know what the green space would be if they were to add more parking on their own site. So at this point in time, we cannot recommend the variance be approved because we don't have that amount or what that would be. We don't even know if they would actually need a variance or not. But without having a number, we can't just grant a blanket variance. So staff is recommending not to approve the green space variance at this point in time. In terms of building perimeter landscaping, it's already above the 50%, and they are not making any changes to the exterior of the building. The main issue then from a zoning standpoint and land use standpoint is really the parking and how that's provided for. The recommendation from staff is to recommend denial of the alternative parking CUP, and that would be because we just did not get any documentation that's required by the ordinance to substantiate having lesser parking than what the ordinance parking schedule requires. In addition, we are recommending denial of the green space variance because, as I had indicated, we don't know if one is actually needed or to what extent that is needed. Staff is recommending approval of the CUP for the religious institution to allow that at 190 River Ridge Circle, subject to 10 conditions. And those would be, one, that a waiver of subdivision is filed to combine the two lots into one. Two, a formal building code will need to be done at the time for building permit. And they will need a certificate of occupancy in order to change the use of the building from its current office to a religious institution. Number three, and this is one that I have a slight change from a staff standpoint, that in the event they need a deviation, if they need to provide additional parking and have issues with green space, that they would need to reapply for that. One of the issues is that if a variance is denied, it cannot be brought back for 6 months. We would suggest that that be waived, that 6-month time frame, to allow the applicant to bring in an application should they find that they need to do that. So we'd like to add that to condition number 3. Number 4, the site plan will need to be revised to provide all the required parking on the subject site, or they need to submit the properly drawn instruments for the additional off-site parking spaces as required by the ordinance. Number 5, they would need to provide a screening plan for the parking lots, so that would be required. Number 6, this would be the engineering condition, that a paved walking access that's ADA accessible be provided between the subject site and off-site parking lot. And then if it uses city right-of-way, it needs to be owned and maintained by the applicant, and they will also need a right-of-way permit. Number 7, if an off-site parking agreement is reached across the street as opposed to adjacent, then the city engineer is recommending that a marked crosswalk be provided. Again, this is something that we've done for similar cases, and that they need to, again, do that to ADA standards and provide a paved access or crosswalk to the project site and in between where the off-site parking is provided. Number 8, in order to meet the city's stormwater requirements, even for the additional parking that they show now, they do need to provide additional information to the city for review of stormwater requirements, so that they would need to do in any event. Number 9, stormwater management report with stormwater calculations needs to be provided. And number 10, all improvements need to be designed to reduce the risk of impacting the city's drinking water supply, because this is in the drinking water overlay district, so they are going to have to provide for some stormwater management and treatment. With that, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Deb. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Garros on this application? Commissioner Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Garros, the one question, the numbers you showed us on the green space requirement showed it going from, I think, 61% to 44, but then I thought you said that that didn't factor in the addition of parking. Is that?
It does, with them adding to those 2 parking spaces, or parking lots, to the north and to the south, that brings the site green space down from existing 61% to 44%. What we don't know is if they provide even more parking on site, say if they are not able to reach an agreement with another property owner, to what extent that would impact green space.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Walter. Any other questions from Commissioner? Commissioner Reddick?
Deb, I always play this role, so I just want to make sure I've clarified a couple of things. To go with Commissioner Walter's question, so if the background's correct, we would go to 44 as the parking lot is planned today, the 2 additional lots. And that still does give us a fair amount of flexibility all the way down to, we're only requiring 25. In the plan that they gave us, on your, it says green space proposed, is it 44%?
Yes, that's based on having the
two new
additional
lots.
parking lots.
Okay.
Yep,
So to my point there, we still have a fair amount of flexibility
yes,
to
get to the 25%
to get
green
to
space.
the 25, or a possible variance if we had a plan on site.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. I'm not, the waiver of subdivision, can you tell me again what happened there? Was it a clerical error when the subdivision was?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
All I can tell you is that the waiver of subdivision was done before, and then the application for the building came in a couple of years later. And the survey that we have on file for the building permit, just showed it being one lot.
Versus 2, okay.
Correct.
And
Answer the question?
We can,
We'll have-
the public hearing is next. We can get it at the public hearing. We'll be right up to that.
And, and then 2, to clarify, the application was first received in March 1, correct, of this? It said March 1st, 2018? Was when and so we've been kind of waiting on,
I don't know the actual date that
Okay.
it was submitted, but they have followed. This was following the standard schedule. This is the meeting that they should have been on, following our standard review schedule.
okay. And the piece we don't have today, just to clarify, is a revised parking plan if they were going to add more than the 126.
Correct.
And the other piece we're missing this evening is the possible kind of joint powers agreement or shared parking agreement and a plan with an adjacent property.
That's correct.
Okay. And then from a standpoint of approvals and denials, you said that staff supports the CUP for the alternative use, but we're not really supporting anything until we get past the 2 parking, the parking and the green space issue.
Correct. The alternate parking they requested is to let them use 71 stalls instead of 196.
196, okay.
And staff is not supportive of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Reddick. Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I understand this correctly, they wanted 71 apartments.
Yes.
But they added 126 on the property.
They increased it
Yeah.
to 126
Yes.
total, yes.
That includes the 71, right?
Yes, but actually, when they lose some stalls in this location here, they lose 4 stalls, existing stalls, to be able to put this access into this parking area. So there
So,
aren't 71 stalls here once this is included.
so that, the last 5.
4 or 5,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So they have now on the property 126
Correct.
total.
Yes.
If they can show tonight at this meeting that they have written agreement with a neighboring property for parking, would we be able to change that recommendation from staff to deny the parking, the green space, the green area, if they can show us that they have the agreement?
Commissioner, we would not, and we've not ever accepted something, a change like that at a meeting. In that case, if you would want, you would continue the meeting to allow us to take a look at what's proposed and come back with that next time.
Thank you. I just wanted to know the procedure that we'll have to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Any other questions for Deb? Deb, I have just a couple of quick questions for my own knowledge, maybe anybody else that might be wondering, but when we're talking about the joint parking agreement with the Better Business Bureau next door, I did read in the background that it would be deeded to the property.
Yes, it has to be.
So if the Better Business Bureau were to leave and the next tenant didn't want to do that shared parking, they're obligated to that because
Yes,
it is
they
deeded
are.
with the parking.
Yes.
What, if any, is a process to undo something like that? If somebody were so adamant that they didn't want that, is that even a possibility?
What they would need to do is both parties would need to provide the required parking on their own, and actually, they would have to hire a private attorney
Okay.
to address that agreement. But that's the whole point. If we're gonna allow off-site use or off-site parking to meet an ordinance standard, then we need to make sure that it's there and will always be there.
Okay, so that would be a matter between two parties later down the road?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then my other question kind of relates to the additional parking, which I think maybe we can address with the applicant when we bring them up. So if there's no other questions from staff, do we have the applicant here tonight, or the representative for the applicant? If you could come up and give us your name and address for the record, we might have a few questions for you. Just right there, yep.
Say name.
Yep, name and address. You can,
Q Morrison address is 12625 Glenbrook Way, Apple Valley, Minnesota.
could you say your first name again?
Q.
Q? Thank you.
Yes.
And
Good evening, Commission. Jay Smigelski of the Ferdinand F. Peters Law Firm, 842 Raymond Street, St. Paul.
thank you, Q and J. I guess I'd just give you an opportunity to explain your piece, and then if we have any questions, we can do that, if you have anything to say right out of the gate.
I actually would like to start with a question of my own, if that would be okay. So if I could ask Ms. Garris, just for some clarification, if we have the Better Business Bureau parking, and the planning is proposed currently, and there's that, we get the easement completed appropriately and recorded, and, to meet the specifications of the proposed requirements, or the proposed conditions, will those two pieces alone satisfy the 196 parking requirement?
You would have to install all of the parking spaces that are shown on the site plan to satisfy the 196 spaces.
Okay, so if all of the proposed plans on the site plan for the 121 were in fact built, and then an appropriate agreement was reached only with the Better Business Bureau location, just for that one southerly property.
Yep, for the balance of the stalls, which right now is 70
And that's permissible based on parking numbers?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm not going to home up here right now, but I just was speaking with Jonathan Zagel, and I know that Q and Dar es Salaam have been speaking with him from the Better Business Bureau, and he is in support of having that easement agreement, having that parking easement recorded so that all 70 spaces can be provided by the Better Business Bureau parking lot. And then we'd have it run with the land so that any additional parties who purchased would be bound by those same requirements. I think, and then is that the one where they would need the, either construct over the right-of-way or
Yes,
construct the-
yeah, some type of access between the off-site parking and the subject site, yep.
Okay, and then my other question is, so on the vote tonight, is it a vote for a recommendation, or is this vote required? In other words, does the commission then vote for, to recommend to the city council that the commission's decisions be followed, or is this a binding, so if it's denied, then it's denied, and then we go on?
We're a recommending body, so this would be a recommendation to the city council.
So on that note, I would ask that the council recommend for a vote Ms. Garris's proposal that in the event that a variance is required for that green space portion of of both the parking lot and of the property as a whole, that Dar es Salaam be exempted from that 60-day waiting period in order to bring that variance request again. It doesn't seem like it's going to be necessary based on the fact that we do have support from the Better Business Bureau and we have the 121 sites, but if it does become necessary, I think that'd be the most, it'd be the easiest way to go. And so we would ask for that exemption from the waiting period.
And Deb recommended that to us in her presentation. And just to clarify, Deb, if they are able to acquire that approval prior to the council meeting, that council decision could reverse any potential recommendation we make tonight based on the facts found between now and then.
Well, the city council can take or not take or change
Yeah.
recommendation from planning commission. I would think, though, that, if we had it in place, we would advise the council of that accordingly, and they can choose. It depends on the vote tonight, too, if the item is placed on their consent agenda or if it's taken off for further discussion.
Okay. Commissioner Singh?
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, if we agree tonight, since it seems as if they are working to get whatever we need for that parking, can we not table this for another meeting to give them time to do that? Or it has to go to the city council at their next meeting? I think we have tabled applications for future meetings so that the applicant can get whatever needs to be done.
Deb, I would lean on you for an answer to that question.
If the planning commission wants to table this, there is enough time for us to provide another 60-day extension. They
Thank you.
have
Thank
until
you,
June
Chair.
28th as it is, so.
So then I would go back, Commissioner Reddick.
Well, yeah, so Deb, just to clarify that, I guess I'm always looking for the cleanest and easiest way to do this. And since we've already had a little bit of timing issues with getting these applications in front of us and getting the plans in front of us, it seems to me like the best thing to do is to propose an extension, correct? What is the time frame? Because if we propose an extension, then staff has the ability to receive the documents that they've asked from the applicant. And then our background is changed, and we could very easily have a different application or a different recommendation from staff in front of us.
Yes, what we would suggest is that at this point, because we just don't know the timing, how long it would take to get that, is that planning commission continue the public hearing to your next meeting. And then if more time is needed, we'll need to further continue at that point.
That seems to me like to be the cleanest, fairest,
Yeah.
most expeditious way to move the application forward. Because I think the applicant has told us that what we've asked for up to this point from staff is available. It's just not here at this point. Is that correct?
I understand that there's a draft of the easement agreement that all the parties seem to be agreeable to, but it hasn't been signed or recorded. From the applicant's standpoint, there are some deadlines in the purchase process of this property, which is not completely owned by the applicant at this time. There's under a valid and enforceable purchase agreement. But due to some deadlines in that document, Dar es Salaam would prefer, and we definitely appreciate the commission's willingness to table the issue and to give us an extension. But I'm confident, based on my conversations with all the property owners, that if the commission were to approve or to recommend approval of the conditional use permit, and I think that's it, right? Just recommend approval of the conditional use permit, we'd be able to have those other documents submitted and approved by the staff so that it could reach a full recommendation, so that staff would support those documents as submitted, so that we would have all the parking requirements. I just don't know what would happen to the purchase process if tonight's meeting were continued to another night and the public hearing were continued.
And I'm not speaking for the commission here, but the issue with that is that we don't have the actual evidence that has been executed. And so to make an approval on a local guarantee is tough from this point of view. So we'll continue to talk up here amongst ourselves, and if we've got, questions, we can figure that out. But if by our next meeting is May 14th, the purchase agreement would be you're planning on executing the purchase agreement ahead of that date?
The purchase agreement has been executed, and we're currently in a contingency period under the purchase agreement. I don't know the exact, I think the deadline for the contingency period is at the end of May. So if this meeting is continued, the public hearing is continued, I think we will go beyond that deadline, and Dar es Salaam may be forced to cancel the purchase agreement, which is, what I think Dar es Salaam would prefer is if this were simply a condition of the conditional use permit. So in other words, if the conditional use permit were granted, it would only be effective if that parking easement were recorded along that staff approval. So in other words, the use would be allowed, but nothing would trigger until that. So it would be a condition that would need to be met for the use to go forward. And I think that based on the status of all the negotiations with the different property owners, I don't think that'll be a problem.
Commissioners, if I could interject as well. At any point, you don't need a conditional use permit to have off-site parking. The ordinance lets you do it as long as you're within 400 feet of the perimeter of the site, and there's enough parking, that satisfies the ordinance for both parcels, and there's a recorded document. So in writing the recommendations, staff has prepared these so that this can continue under either option. It's just that if they weren't able to get an agreement and had to add additional parking on their own site, we didn't know how much green space would be left. That was the only question. But if it looks like this parking agreement is close at hand, the conditions as proposed will still work.
And I think what I've seen in the past, and maybe it was even in this case, that would just simply be saying, as proposed, the use cannot go forward. In other words, you just hold up the building permit until the easement is recorded, so that there aren't really any issues, and so everything just kind of tracks, and then it's just left to the applicant on its own to get that completed. And if the applicant doesn't get it completed, then we just don't need to come back, and restart the application or to continue the public hearing, which would be the applicant's preference.
And you kind of nailed on a question I had. Deb, if we did add or if we don't need to add a condition, but if, let's say, the parking easement fails, and then they did need to come back for a new parking arrangement with the green space, would that be a new application process with new escrows and everything else, or would they be able to ride off of the existing application?
They would need to file a new application. It's just that we are suggesting that the 6-month waiting period not apply, so that they could make application if they needed to. But yeah, and, you know, we have to take the application fee and escrow. If the city council decides that they want to waive it, the applicant can request that, but the city council is the only one that can waive that.
Okay. Commissioner Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what I'm hearing is that the green space requirement becomes a condition. And so if we approve the if we recommend the CUP to the city council, that green space requirement has to be met.
Yes, 25%.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yes.
And they have 44% now, and it looks like, but we just can't go with that, we're not certain if they, depending on the additional parking areas.
That's
So I think it will work for us, approve the CUP, put the green space down as a condition. If they don't meet, they can't get a permit to go ahead with the work.
That's correct. And that is included, the condition is included.
Are we meeting the parking requirements by approving a recommendation then?
Yes.
There are two variances we have, the green space and the CUP. The
You have-
CUP and the green space.
You have the conditions are that, number one, the site plan is revised to provide all the required parking on the subject site, or they need to submit a properly drawn agreement that will need to be filed, and that the applicant is correct. We require evidence that the easement is recorded before we'll issue a building permit.
That's right.
So, yes.
It's pretty straightforward to me. Commissioner Roderick?
Thank you, Chair. To further qualify, I want to tag on to Commissioner Singh's comment. Really, the crux to the issue we have with the green space is there's nothing here. If we were to move, I make an assumption that we were going to move forward, we've got language in here talking about parking, 126 stalls, 70 off-site. The bind that we could put them in is that staff had honestly wanted the opportunity to have a drawn plan to show more than 126, which when we could have had the opportunity to approve less than 25% green space in this instance, and they could have moved forward with that.
Correct.
Given the wording we have this evening, they could come back to us with more additional parking, but they're not going to be able to exceed or have less than 25% green space.
That's correct.
Correct? Okay. So the green space
Yes.
is there. So if they would have had that application in front of us or a drawing in front of us, we would have had the opportunity to approve less. Tonight, we can't, given the wording of the recommendation.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
If I may speak, Commissioner. So with our understanding was that, and it still is, that the green space variance and the parking were conditions to the conditional use permit. So and we still have that understanding, and we still have that as our agreement with Better Business and other neighbors that we were talking to. So I, like the commission has recommended, recommending the conditional use permit with conditions of the parking agreement and the green space variance. And we don't, as proposed right now, our parking proposal puts the green space at 44%, which we don't plan to go below 25%. We are at 44% with the additional parking stalls right now. So there's no way that we're going to go less than 44% or 25%. So we're not going to pursue going less than 25%. we're just going to pursue the conditional use permit be recommended, and we have those other two things in place.
Any questions, any additional questions? No additional questions. Thank you for the clarification. It was very helpful. If you have anything else, now would be a time. Otherwise, I'll open up the public hearing and
Well, thank you. That's it, thank you.
thank you, Q. Thank you, Jay.
I don't know if they're here to speak on this project or another project, but that's the list we have so far.
We do have a public hearing. We do have a sign-in sheet. If you signed on in the lobby and you want to speak to this, I would ask you to come up to the, oh, I'm sorry, I have to open the public hearing. And if, it is open. If anybody would, that did sign in on the lobby wants to speak to this, please come up now. Otherwise, if anybody else would like to speak to this that did not sign in, now is an opportunity to do that. Come on up. If you could give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Pete DeRose, and I'm at 3352 Corliss Trail in Rosemont. I used to live in Burnsville. I work in Burnsville, and I work for an organization in Minnesota that our culture is all about giving back and being a part of the community, and especially in Burnsville. And I work a lot with business owners, and part of my job is protecting business owners. And I'm also a lobbyist and a consultant at the legislature. And my day job, being a risk manager, protecting business owners. Do you guys know how many businesses are going to be displaced by this, or families affected? I realize this is a great thing for a lot of people. I'm just curious if you've looked at the almost 30 businesses that will be pushed out. Local business owners, some of them are single mothers. More importantly, some of them are veterans that have fought for this country, and they can't make it work anywhere else. Now I'm curious, is this an emotional decision? Is this a monetary, financial decision? Is there any, it sounds like people's minds are already made up. I don't know. I would just really like to hear what you guys have to say. 'Cause will be very disappointed if this goes through. And I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I'm here. I'm not here in any official capacity. But I have some very, very dear friends that are in that building whose lives will be turned upside down by this going through. Now, I don't know if this is a conversation or if this is just me making a statement. If it's just a statement, I'll step back. If there's something you guys can say, I would love to hear it.
I think right now it's probably just a statement,
Okay.
unless anybody wants to participate. Commissioner Singh?
Yes, Mr. Chair. You've made a statement. I think that's a business decision between the group of people here, Dar es Salaam people and the people who own the property. Now, if these people buy the property, then they can do what they want with the property as long as they meet the rules and regulations. But the displacing of people, I don't know about that, but that's something that should be brought to the seller. Because if the people buy the place, I mean, you go and you buy a place, you do what you want with it, as long as you meet the ordinance. But I don't think we can deal with that. I understand what you're saying. I mean, we got veterans, we got single parents going to be displaced, but I think this is the wrong place to discuss it.
So this has nothing to do with the actual sale going through or anything like that. This is strictly about what? Just so I'm not trying to be, again, argumentative. I'm genuinely curious. What is this meeting for?
If the sale goes through and this house of worship wants to go into that location, they have to meet certain city codes based on their occupancy, parking, as you probably have heard. And so if any variation to the city code needs to be met, they have to come and get it through the public hearing process. And so as far as the sale of the building, that's a private sale between two individuals that we have no control or say over whatsoever.
So is there ever a time that the city's gonna hear something like this where something like that could be denied or up for review in any way?
Not at this level.
Not this level. And what about the May 8th meeting?
The city council meeting,
City council meeting, will that have any bearing on anything?
depending on how the vote goes tonight, it'll likely probably be on a consent agenda and there won't be any discussion on it.
Just just going back to being a risk manager and protecting businesses, I just feel like our cities should be protecting our business owners, and it's just very concerning to me. And again, I'm not here in any official capacity. I'm here to support some very good friends of mine, and I just wanted to make the statement, and hope that's all right. Thanks for hearing me.
Thanks for coming tonight. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to this?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Jurdy. My wife Pat is sitting over there. We are the owners of the subject property.
Jeff, could you give us your address just for the
And
record?
the address, we live at 46 East 125th Street in Burnsville.
Thank you.
And we've been here since '78. We purchased the property there in 1993. And interestingly enough, to me at least, on the advice of our architect, we purchased the additional parcel to the north because someday we might have parking problems. And so we did that. We asked the city at that time if we should resubmit our building proposal, our permit process, to join after we joined the two parcels. And the city told us they did not care. So we didn't do it at that time. And that's that. I just wanted to add that to the record because
you.
otherwise, that's just a point of information. Another point of information is that my wife and I, our fondest hope is that instead of being owners, we will now become tenants and stay in the property. She has an art studio there. We ran it as an art school for about 15 years and is hoping, but we understand it's up to the new owner whether that fits into their plans. The plans that were submitted with the proposal suggest that there will be some rented spaces, such as the hair salon and various other tenants. We removed ourselves from that negotiation process because we didn't want to be caught between the tenants, who are in many cases dear friends. We've had some tenants since 1994 when we opened. Most of the tenants are very happy and thrilled, and they consider what's going on is a positive thing. So as I said, we hope to be tenants, but it's up to the Dar es Salaam community, even for us, whether that fits with their plans for the property. And I think that's all I need to say, Mr. Singh. I appreciated your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this application? If you could give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Abdul Mursal, 605 East Brunsville Parkway,
you.
Brunsville, Minnesota 55337.
Thank you.
I am a 17 years resident of the city of Brunsville. So I think someone who is from a different city wouldn't speak for our concerns and issues. But we appreciate the commissioners if they will recommend approval of this building for us. The community is large, and we want a permanent place that we can call home. I came to this city as a teenager. Now I'm a father of 4. They were all born here in Brunsville, and those kids need a place that they can go to and feel like it belongs to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this?
Hi, I did not sign in. My name is Kaylin Green. I'm a tenant at the building 190, and I apologize. This isn't the place for our arguments and our thoughts. We were blindsided by the sale of this building, so on behalf of all the artists and the small business owners, I feel like it's my responsibility to voice our opinions. This building was constructed for artists. We have built our branding around this building. We're very invested in it. It's a safe, quiet place for all of us to join together and create. And I just need to voice that it's devastating for us, and I understand that there is a need for this group to meet, and it's a beautiful building, but we really love this building and we want to keep it. And if there's any way possible that we could get an extension, I'm confident that we could make a campaign to save the art in the South Metro with this building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Q Mursal, the lead person in this project. As far as some of the concerns that have come up, we are willing to accommodate some of the current tenants. We haven't spoken to any of the tenants. We are in good communication with the owners, current owners. But anything regarding, we didn't make notification of kicking out anyone or any sort of that stuff. Those concerns, we would like them to come to us instead of coming to you. And I'm sure we can work things out with anyone, because we don't want to displace anyone or take anyone out of business. We are non-profits. We're not for business or for profit. So anyone who is concerned as a tenant right now, like the previous tenant has just voiced their opinion, we are willing to accommodate them to the best of our ability. So that just for the record. So I believe those concerns should come to us, and we're not gonna be mean to anyone. Like I said, we're not for profit. So we can give them extensions, extend their leases if need be, but just wanted to put that out there because we don't want to seem like bad guys and just kicking people out. Thank you. And that was that comment was against the recommendation of my attorney. I still made it anyway.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Helen Peterson. I didn't check in either. My address is 4208 Sunset Drive, Spring Park. But I am a tenant at 190 River Ridge. I own River School of Music. I've been a tenant at River Ridge since 2007. We have the whole lower level is essentially our music school, where we have around 220 kids and families coming through the building each week. I am very happy about this change in ownership. I think it's very exciting for the area. I think it is a beautiful use of a beautiful building. And yes, it was originally designed for artists and art. And I think it's kept that true to that for all these years. And I don't really see that is necessarily going to change. I just want to say that as a business owner in the building, that I welcome this change, both for the Jurdies and for the new community moving in. I think it's a beautiful addition to the building, and I think it's a good fit for it. I'm hopeful that my business does not get in the way of any plans there. As a business owner there in the school that I have, I actually find this kind of more of an exciting opportunity for bringing more people into the building and have it be a more robust community space than it already is. So that's the opinion that I wanted to voice as somebody that's there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the building. I'm very much looking forward to building a bridge and in the community with the new owners.
Thank you.
Nasteha Hassan, 13872 Alabama Avenue, Savage, Minnesota. I wanted to speak on the behalf of the youth and let you guys know that that growing here in Minnesota, coming straight to Burnsville, I've noticed that the population of our people has grown, and we definitely want a place called home, so that as we get older, we could be just like as our teachers, and we grow our community even more. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about the youth and how we just want to make our place greater and a place for all of us to come through and call home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hi.
Hi.
I get very emotional. I'm sorry, but I've lived here for very long. My name is Hanifa Muhammad. I live at 13763 Aspen Grove Lane, Barnesville, Minnesota, since 2002. We've been moved for so many times from one location to another location. This location has, sincerely, I don't know how I can express it, but has given us hope. That's where we can have a place where even people from the city, if they need it, when they come to, Barnesville, anybody who comes here, they'll ask, do you have a Somali community? We have a small office right next to National University on Frontage Lane, but this building has given us hope. It's not only a mosque, it's a community center, and I think it's very important for us mothers to have a place where we can bind and get help. Married women, we can have help. We have imams and sheikhs who are psychologists. They are marriage counselors. We have fear of culture. As you know, we are new immigrants here too. But we will finally have a place where we can find somebody we can talk to. And since it's going to be a building that we have, it will have more space, more things, good things will happen. We can have our youth getting help. We can have us mothers get help, single moms get help. I think it's given us hope. The art place too, the music school. We are Muslims, but still our kids, when they go to school, they take music. I never knew we have a music school right here. I used to drive my son loves the guitar. I have to drive him all the way to Minneapolis. Now I know where it is because of that building, that I know that one day we'll have a place there. As a Somali community, we can go and get all the things we need. I will really love you to, rethink about. I don't think parking is a huge issue. It's the right space. We needed a place where we can have every office. We can, it's right in the middle of Barnesville too. Location is perfect. I think we can sort. We have a lot of land. We can use it for parking. Around it, we have a lot of, neighbors who are really willing to help us even park there without even, going to the offices. Please take it into consideration that finally it's something that us having good hopes of really connecting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ahmed Kahi. I wasn't planning to speak when I came in, but I just want to say something quick. When I first came in Burnsville, about 12, 13 years ago, I was by myself. And now I have 6 kids. And this is where they call home. This is where they all born, in Burnsville, Minnesota. It makes me upset when I hear people call that the community being displaced. I'm not sure what that person has in mind. To him, it look like community. We are part of the community. Our kids go to here schools. We live here, and we are the community in Burnsville, Dakota County. We've been moved so many times before, for whatever reason, and I respect whatever the process and the reason the city has. But I plead as a resident, as a citizen, our community deserves a place, not for profit, place they can pray, feel peace, and worship. And that's all we're asking. That's all we're asking. Whatever process you have, I respect it. Whether it's parking lot, another process. I respected that. My older son the other day said he wanted to be a police in Burnsville, and he picked Burnsville. I asked him why some other cities, and he was like, that's my city. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Lindsay May. I live at 13205 Oakland Drive, just down the street. I too am a resident of Burnsville, and one thing that I love about the city is just the heart of business for it. I'm a small business owner, I'm a tenant at this building, and I've been there for about 5 years. One thing that I wanted to do when I started my business was be a role model for my daughter. It's important to me. Family is so important, and having this opportunity to showcase that I can do this for her and for my family and make an impact on the community and express my skills and my art, which, by the way, this building, it's going to be incredibly difficult to find a different space that is going to meet the needs of my natural light photography studio. Incredibly difficult for this. And as was mentioned, we have been blindsided by this. We just learned about the sale on Wednesday. Had no notification, whatever. Another concern that I have is, what about our clients? Where are they supposed to park? We've been talking so much about parking lot issues. Where are the existing tenants? Where are they going to be? You know, we care about the atmosphere and the welcoming for the people that we're trying to draw in to earn our income for that as well. Consider that. I ask that you would just consider that as well. So, and it's also very discouraging to see that plans drawn up, like my space is going to turn into a computer lab, like without any knowledge since Wednesday. So I just wanted to have the opportunity to share my standpoint as well. That's all.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Jurdy. I live at 46 East 125th Street. And with my husband Jeff, we own this building. I just need to make a point of information. Lindsay May, who just spoke, is not officially a tenant. She is a subtenant of one of our tenants. So she has never signed a lease with us. We have signed a purchase agreement whereby we made an agreement to go through this process with Dar es Salaam. We very much hope that they will buy our building. I believe totally in what they want to do. We built the building as an art school, not as a photography studio, as an art school. And as a school, I felt like our building had its highest purpose. And I feel now if Dar es Salaam owns the building, our building will once again be highest purpose. There are a lot of businesses in there now, but businesses can go to other places. I started it as an art school. We built the ceilings very high so that the light would come in a long way. And this is wonderful for photographers as well. But we do live in an interesting time in which artificial light can recreate nature. I can dial up what color of light I want. I don't have to have a high ceiling to do that, but our building does create an atmosphere for everyone who walks in the door. And I look, as building owner, for the highest and best use of that. And that is not my art studio. That is the largest number of people who are served well and have a place they can call home after many of them fleeing for their lives. To me, that overrides everything else. Everything else. These people deserve a place to call their own, and I would love to have them be in our beautiful building. They're beautiful people. They deserve to be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Amin Haroon. I live at 1804 Lennon Court in Burnsville. I've lived in Burnsville since 2001. I came as a ninth grader to Burnsville. And ever since I've lived in this city. And after graduating from high school, from Burnsville High School, I went to college at Metro State, St. Paul, found a nice job in St. Paul, but couldn't leave the city of Burnsville because of the community that we have created here. When we first moved in, it was really lonely. I was just learning English. It was difficult to find a place to go. We only had very few places to go, such as the YMCA, but you can only play basketball for so long. Finally, we had some of the community members creating this organization, this Dar es Salaam community, by renting a space just across the 35W bridge, and that's when we first started. Ever since then, it has become a place for us to go. It's not only a place that people worship, but it's a place for people come together for just socializing with the community, helping each other out. You will see somebody who's getting help with homework. You will see somebody who's getting help with letter reading, simply as that. You will see somebody who is getting marriage counseling. You will see people that are resolving their disputes sometimes in there. You will find youth that are doing programming in this community center. But because the space that we're currently in it's a rented space, and we could be asked to leave at any time. We've been looking for a space that would be a permanent home and that would create a place where we finally can unpack our backpacks. I feel like this is finally home and finally being part of the fabric of the community. And this building, I think it's been a prayer answered of many people in my community who've been really praying hard and really been asking and looking for an opportunity. When this beautiful family came in and said, yes, we can buy our building. I think we finally have that opportunity. I understand the tenants who are in there now who are concerned, and I sympathize with them. But like the management said in our organization, like Hugh said earlier, those that can be accommodated can be part of our community and can be accommodated. But at the same time, I think the best use of this building is for Dar es Salaam to purchase it, and we just thank you for listening to us today.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much allowing us to stand in front of you in this great planning of the Dar es Salaam.
Could you give us your name before you start?
My name is Ali Osman, and address 12242 Parkview Lane, Apartment C, Burnsville, Minnesota 55337. Personally, I lived in Minnesota since 2001, and I lived in Burnsville since 2009. And we work in this place as volunteers and teachers and imams. We do work with the community. This place, community was waiting for a while, and since we submitted the application, the kids and everybody in the community were asking us every day when it will be the hearing, when it will be the approving. So everybody's waiting this place because many families in our community are, depending to Dar es Salaam services. So we wanted to have a great place like this place to worship and to get other services of the communities. Yes, the concern is that other people have. It's all, that will happen when something will change. Everybody will have different opinion. We will not have same opinion all the time. We respect their opinion, and we respect them. And if they want to stay there, we will let them stay. But we are buying the place for the great purpose. Paying thousands of dollars because of to get services, and this is our home. When some people say, we have to protect our city, who will protect the city from who? We are from this city. We own this city. This is our place. We own this city. We come here to vote all the time. We are citizens. We are from here. We are from Bristol. We go everywhere in the city. We are from Minnesota. But when you say protect our city, it looks like we are guests or we are outsiders of the city. We are not. We are from here, so we will request from our great commissioners to recommend this place to buy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. La hawla wa la quwwata illa
Peace be upon you.
My name is Batun Usman.
My name is Batun Osman.
I live Bronzeville.
I live in Burnsville.
12700 Nicolay Avenue. وحيرا نقالنا. وعم كل البلاد ما أقال. وعم كل البلاد
I only know very limited amount of English.
12700 Nicolay Avenue. My apartment 105.
That's our address.
وحان إمي 2005 وضنك.
I've moved to this country in 2005.
أفرقيا للسوقلي.
I've come with 4 kids.
أفرتي هاي سكولي كبحين.
They've all graduated from high school.
كل جاي هذين.
They all have gone to college.
برونسفيل دك كوميونتي دقن برونسفيل دك وفي عنا.
We have a great community here in Burnsville.
برونسفيل سومالي دك لكانينا ودنك دك وفي عنا ودنك بسمسي أنك قبلني وأنك قبلني وأكش قيسنا قريانك قدرني حق كلنا.
As a Somali community in this city, we're also part of the community. We've contributed. We work. We pay taxes. We own houses. We are part of the society in this community.
ويلي قبرنا تلي قبرنا حي كل هذا هاي بروس في الجوري ويلي حي كل سابج لبضوا بواي قتين.
2 of my kids, one bought a house in Burnsville, the other one in Savage.
مت أنا كأنا منه ويجي سوريت.
My
الماء.
So I came with one of my children, and the other one came before I came.
مركو هاي كم سنة حق وضع كلنا 60 سنة وهيدي لا دقنا أنا قد ابنه عاي أنا كن كأنا ودنا على وحقيقة شك سبقين شك.
Okay, so we have come here because of what happened in our home countries, but we have adopted this country as well, and we have become part of this community, and we would like to be part of this community and included in this community we live in. I'm 64 years old. I've been here in this country for 13 years. I've lived in my country, in my home country for 51 years. I've owned farms. I've owned homes. Because of civil war, we had to just pack and leave.
Thank you.
Thank you for welcoming us.
Thank you.
Thank you for accepting us to your community as well. Thank you.
Hi, I didn't sign in and I wasn't going to talk. I would have dressed up a little bit. My name is Susan VM. My address is 2233 Whispering Trail in Egan. And I am a tenant at 190 River Ridge also. I think I've been there about 10 years, maybe, renting an art studio. And I just wanted to say that I think about 12 or 13 years ago, an attempt was made to work with the city of Burnsville to maybe have them buy the building as an art center or turning it into an artist co-op. And that was a tough road and it just fell flat and nothing happened. So it would have been nice if that would have worked to utilize the architecture of the building for arts, to remain in the arts. But that didn't fly, and I just want to say I support this new sale and the new Dar es Salaam taking over the building, and hope that a lot of us artists can stay. But anyway, just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ismail Aiden. I live in Burnsville, 120 East, Highway 13, apartment 322. And I just wanted to speak amongst the youth of Dar es Salaam. A friend of mine already mentioned it. And Dar es Salaam, it has been a place where I grew up. I have 5 siblings. They all attend Dar es Salaam as of right now. It's been a place that has kept me like on the right track. It's kept me in check. I have many professors and teachers and leaders of the place with me. We have many elders. There's so many different ages within our community. And I have to say, I feel like this building will have a huge contribution to our youth especially. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, I will close the public hearing. And after letting that soak in, I will turn it over to the commission for discussion or a motion or a modification of the recommendation as written on this application. Commissioner Singh.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think we have discussed this earlier. I don't think there's a problem with the CUP, the conditional use permit. The problem is with the parking and the green space, and both go together. Because dependent on the parking, the additional parking from the neighbors, that will determine the green space. I suggest that we make the green space and the parking a condition and just approve the conditional use permit with that condition. Because if they don't meet that condition, they can't get a permit to do the work.
Mr. Singh, could you, so a little definition to the condition for staff as far as how you want it to read?
I think staff is good enough. We have the best staff, and I think they are good enough. They'll word it to say that that the applicant will provide the necessary documents to support their parking, the parking requirement of the city, which will determine the green space. And they will have to meet the 25% green space before it's approved.
Okay.
And subject to that, they will have to get if they don't do that, then they wouldn't get a permit.
Okay. Commissioner Redrick.
Commissioner Singh, I would like to just clarify something, staff. What Commissioner Singh is asking for, 25% is already in the code.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So in addition to something I don't think is going to help with the, unless we were going to look for a number less than 25%.
No, I wasn't saying, I said they gotta meet the city's requirement of 25%.
So then adding anything in the way of a condition really would be a duplicate of what the code allows them to do today, correct?
Correct, you would not need to add a condition. They do have to meet the
Okay.
25%
So-
unless
so-
you do something different.
So then, how do we deal with, that was a variance in the document?
The variance, we had initially, again, suggested that they show all 196 parking spots on the site so that we would know, to save, time and the applicant having to come back, that type of thing. They have stated tonight that they believe even if they would have to provide additional parking, they wouldn't need to go less than the 25%. And that they also have an agreement close at hand for the other parking spaces. So I don't believe that there would be an issue. What we would suggest is, because we don't have a specific amount to apply for a variance, is to deny that variance, but also then to indicate that if for some reason they do need a green space variance, that they can bring that back and do not have to wait that 6-month period.
So, Mr. Chair, the recommendation from staff then stands as is.
Yes, with the one change.
Number 3.
Number 3.
Yep, to
Yes.
number 3, yes, that they would not have to wait the 6-month period to reapply for a variance.
So should we wordsmith and change number 3? So we all agree with what the statement would be?
Yes, you can do that.
Chair, I took it as we would add at the end of the condition saying that we waive the 6-month moratorium on applications.
Good enough.
Yep, that would work.
Anything else?
No, go ahead.
I'm gonna move a motion.
I did, we'll go ahead and make a motion. Just wanna-
Before I move the motion, just want to address the applicants. First of all, Assalamu alaikum. The city accepts you and value your being in Burnsville. All of us up here agree with that. I want you to know that we accept, I mean, even to use the word accept, you're part of us. You're part of the community. You make this community. You make Burnsville what it is. And I personally appreciate it. I'm one of you, okay? I came from a different country. But Burnsville is my home. It's been my home for a very long time now. And I really, really appreciate living in Burnsville, and I think I echo the sentiments that you expressed a little while ago. We have very good staff, and if you work with the staff, there are certain ordinances that have to be met. We just can't recommend something and we don't meet the requirements. So what we have done, the way we word it now, we are going to recommend the CUP, the approval of the CUP, but then the conditions and the parking and the green space, you have to work with staff to make that happen. And I think you can make it happen. So it's my honor and privilege to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council denial of the alternative parking CUP and variance to green space standards and the approval of the CUP to allow religious assembly within the existing building located at 190 River Ridge Circle, subject to the 10 conditions.
Second. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion before the vote?
I'd like to clarify something.
Commissioner Reddick.
I'm confused, staff. I need you, given the statement that Commissioner Singh made about the denial of the alternative CUP, I want to make sure that that's the correct, does that, what has to be said, or
Yes.
because of the green space?
Yes.
Yes, in order, what you're stating is that they do need to meet the ordinance, that the alternate parking CUP would allow them to have fewer parking spaces than what
Okay.
the ordinance requires.
I just,
So,
Yeah, that's okay, that's okay.
I wanted to make sure.
And then you also want to include number 3, as amended to deal with that 6-month waiting
Yes.
period.
As submitted. Commissioner Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say to everybody here, thank you for coming and being part of this tonight. It is not often that we get a full room here at the Burnsville Planning Commission, so we appreciate your interest. And I want to make a little public service announcement. On the City of Burnsville website, there is an application form if you're interested in being on the Planning Commission or other city boards and commissions. And I know the City Council who makes those appointments would welcome your involvement in that. So I would encourage you all to take a look at that and be part, that's what we did. So we just kind of stepped up and volunteered, and we would encourage you, if this parking discussion interests you, to put an application in, because they're always looking for people to be part of this. I will be voting in support of this motion. I want to echo Commissioner Singh's comments. I appreciate you all chose Burnsville, or many of you did, and we appreciate your coming here. And I think this is a good project. For those who express some displeasure with this tonight, it is not our job as a planning commission to get involved in private property transactions. It's really to look at ordinances and how this applies, and I'm comfortable with where this motion goes. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Walter. Commissioner Brederick.
And I would also like to make a comment that I would be in support of this application this evening also. I would like to address the applicant from a standpoint that I need you to understand that you've got a couple of hurdles prior to the city council meeting. You brought forth a good applicant to us, except for a couple of things, and we kind of got to this evening because that paperwork wasn't in place. If we would have had an alternative parking agreement, and if we would have had a plan in front of us that said this is where the parking stalls were going to be, we could have probably then also granted you a possible, if we would have voted for it, a lower green space, because we do that, because your use is allowed in this area. It meets all of our other codes. There's just those two stumbling blocks. So I need everybody to understand that if we do approve this, and I believe that we've had enough people to say that we would, you have a couple of things you have to do prior to moving forward. And if those things had been done in the past, this would have been a much different meeting. But I'm excited. I think it's a great use of the building. I do understand the issue of the tenants, but I would also say, and I think you worded it very well, you rent today, and because you rent, could be removed from your property. You're not the owner, and you've reached out and you're going to purchase a property. And as we've stated, we don't have the ability to intervene between private sales. We look at land use. So I'm in support of this application this evening. I think it's a great opportunity. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand you've got a couple of other hurdles that are outside of our ability to change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Brederick. Commissioner Singh.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. To the youth who came up and spoke, my background is in education. I've been in education for most of my life. And I want to commend you for coming and speaking on behalf of the youth. I challenge you to be leaders in the Dar es Salaam community. And not only in that Dar es Salaam community, in your city. You cannot go wrong when you be a spokesperson or a leader for the youth. The youth are our leaders, and I urge you to work with others, those who are not here now, work with them and help them to be involved, get them involved, because youth have power. So I just want to throw that out to the youth who spoke tonight, and I would expect that you will do your part in making this organization a success. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. All right, and for the sake of time, I'll save my ending speech. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. This was a crash course in civics. We have a motion and a second on the table. All of those in favor, as the recommendation is written with the small modification to item number 3. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries. And that will again go to the city council next Tuesday, May 1st,
And that meeting starts at 5:30.
5:30.
5:30, Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
May
I'm sorry.
May
8th, I apologize. May 8th, 5:30, same place.
Okay, just small things before we close. Thank you all for your recommendations. So I wanted to make a quick joke about the public office or elected officials. So we do have a few people coming for those empty seats. Keep that in mind. They're not going to replace you, but there are 2 empty seats right there. Just those 2, yeah.
The ugly guys are staying around for a little bit.
We also do have a few people interested in the school board and other offices out there. So expect us out there soon.
Good.
We're just getting started. The other piece is that our understanding initially was that we can get the agreements, and it wasn't a condition to the conditional use permit. It was we can get the conditional use permit and still get that stuff later. That was our understanding. That could have been a misunderstanding. Just wanted to clarify that.
That is correct. The condition, before you would be able to get your building permit,
Right.
and that's if the council approves it the same way. Yes, before the building permit, then you would need to either show all, 196
Right.
parking spots on your site, or have that parking easement in place with, for the off-site parking for the 70 spaces.
Okay, yes, that was our understanding.
Yes.
And thank you. And the last piece is that the gentleman who first spoke, he works for Cross Anderson, and that's the group that we rent from today. So he's losing business. Just kidding.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Our next item on this evening's agenda is a public hearing for All Energy Solar for a conditional use permit to allow for a rooftop solar array variation from the zoning ordinance solar standards for property located at 13501 First Avenue South. And if we'll wait,
Announce we have another application.
if we're, if you're not here for the next application, we could move it to the lobby. They're moving.
You can.
Should I use my dad voice?
Yeah.
Play the cookies.
You can go if you want, or you can stay. You can.
Here's this one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, Deb. All right. Ms. Garros is presenting this evening.
Thank you, commissioners, and for the folks in the audience and general public. This is a public hearing this evening. It's for a conditional use permit. And what this is the city adopted, as the commissioners are aware, but the city adopted a solar ordinance back in 2015. And in the event that someone wants to do something that is different than what the ordinance standards are, what was built into the ordinance is a conditional use permit process to allow people to come in and have the planning commission and then city council take a look at their specific site and proposal and to be able to allow a variation to the standards, and that would be through your recommendation and then ultimately city council approval. So that is what is being requested. It's a variation from the ordinance standards, and pretty much one in particular. The subject site is a corner lot. They are zoned R1, single family. They're within a neighborhood of all single family. And the applicant, they had made application for a building permit and had provided a number of different options for the solar panel array, trying to satisfy the ordinance so that staff could administratively approve a building permit. The building permit application information, this is the solar panels that are shown on here, and this site has a number of different roof angles, and it is not a flat standard, roof where staff felt comfortable in issuing just a building permit, and it was the position of the Development Review Committee when they took a look at this that it did not meet the standard requirement for the panels to be designed as such to meet the to meet the shape and proportion of the roof. So that is where the recommendation then came after the DRC reviewed it, that the applicant make application for a conditional use permit. And if the Planning Commission and City Council feel that this is appropriate after you take a look at the site conditions, then you can approve it or recommend approval to it. It's just something that staff did not believe we could do administratively. This gives you what the south elevation looks like at the top and west elevation. And this is one of the other issues. When we looked at the site itself, we have part of the home has this gabled roof, and it's not centered on the roof. So that makes things a little bit more difficult. You also have a situation where, I'm just going to go here. Tried to show it on here, it's a little bit difficult to see, but the roof also has about a 2-foot indent at this location and also here, and then you come to the back and there's another indentation, plus, the different roof lines. So that is why, because of the complicated nature of the roof itself and the panels, that's why the Development Review Committee thought that this should be something that comes before Planning Commission. The proposal, as shown when staff reviewed it, we had suggested that if the bottom 8 panels were removed, that would have more of a square, and we look at trying to keep a contiguous like square or a rectangle in terms of the building permits that staff approves. Anything beyond that, we'll be bringing forward to Planning Commission through a conditional use permit for your review. We did identify to the applicant, the ordinance is set up to allow building integrated solar, and these are some of the examples that the Planning Commission and Council reviewed when we did the ordinance, and these are what we sent along to folks. If you have any of these types, there is really no review required other than your standard building permit because they're integrated into the site. And then the Planning Commission and Council, also at the time they adopted the ordinance, was really looking at having these types of installations where you have, like I say, an area that's either square, rectangular, something that's very uniform. And what they need to meet in terms of the ordinance is the item number 4 here, under the roof mounted, is that placement of panels should be uniform to the slope and proportions of the array shall match the shape and proportions of the roof. And again, because of the odd indentations and various roof lines, that's what we thought this should come before you. When you are on First Avenue and driving along, really you don't look head-on into the solar panels. The roof really to the south faces the property owner, the house to the south. The roof will be visible from the house to the south and also from the house directly to the east. So it would not be something that we could be exempt from the ordinance because it is visible from the street and from adjacent properties. These are just a couple of photos that we included, just showing as you head down First Avenue about what you would see. And then we provided also, again, just a number of aerial photo views so you get an idea of the roof shape, and everything that's proposed for the solar panels, is proposed basically through here. This is that angled roof line. So it'll be proposed from the peak here, basically down to the sides. The recommendation from staff is if the Planning Commission feels that this site and the solar array that's proposed is something that is reasonable, that the plans or that the conditional use permit can be approved. We suggest 3 recommended conditions, and that be that the plans are corrected to actually show the roof shape, those indentations, and those types of things. So a little bit more detail there. That the plans demonstrate that there will not be any overhangs. The panels cannot overhang the roof, so just need that information. They also need to make sure that there won't be any penetration to the flashing where the roof, the angled parts of the roof, those valleys meet. And we believe that they can do that, but the plans need to be revised to show that. And then also that the panels will not exceed 80% of the south-facing roof. And we believe that that can be met as well. It's just a matter of having it provided on the plans. With that, those are the recommendations of staff, and I can stand for questions.
Commissioners, questions for staff on this application? Commissioner Singh.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Ms. Garris, as you said, from First Avenue, the panel will not be, you wouldn't see the panel, right?
You can see it a little bit. It's fairly well screened, and because of the way the roof is, it's not a direct view, similar to the last conditional use permit application where the Planning Commission had some issues with that stepped array. That you could see fully. This, you'll be able to see it if you're really looking, but it's not something that is just out front.
But the adjacent neighbors can see.
Yes, the neighbors to the south and then also to the east.
Were they informed about this application?
Yes, we did send notification of the public hearing out to property owners within 350 feet of the perimeter of this lot.
And any feedback?
We had one individual call. They were actually located several houses away. We're just really more interested in what the application was for. We had a couple of inquiries, just what was being proposed, but no one indicating they had issues or wanted to see something changed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Dib, can you help me out on that one solar panel that's overlaying the accessory, the wing of the home? I know you spoke to that, but the one that's, or maybe the applicant can address that. Why don't you? Thanks, Deb. I think we recognize.
Chair, Commissioners, good to see you all again.
Thanks for coming back.
You told us you weren't coming back.
Could you give us your name real quick before?
Yes, Brian Allen, All Energy Solar. I'm at 985 Goodrich Avenue in St. Paul.
Thank you.
I'm here representing Mark and Julie. Could we get this set up so that we could see this image? Is that possible?
Have the,
Usually when we ask really nice, they seem to make it.
yeah, the folks in the
The control room.
control room.
Control room, can we get some help? Well, I'll just start with this. So Mark and Julie have been doing energy efficiency upgrades to their home. And the concern about the slight indentation on the roof, that is no longer there. The roof is a continuation from ridge all the way to gutter on that south-facing slope. They did that with the use of SIP panels. So they replaced and added SIP panels to the roof of their home to increase energy efficiency through insulation. And when doing that, they actually established a slightly different roof line that just continued all the way down. So that indentation is no longer there. In adding that SIP panel, it actually increased the height of the roof, which made some slight adjustments to those valleys. And we actually have an updated layout that Mark did based on his most recent measurements. And I can show that as well. But once this gets up here, you'll see a picture here of the house itself when that pops up here. But so that should hopefully resolve the concern that Deb and the staff recommended as far as having some updated plans. I think we've accomplished that through this updated layout, and that will hopefully suffice.
Brian, can you tell me what a SIP panel is?
I probably would be the worst one to explain that.
It
Mark?
stands for a structurally insulated panel. It's a roofing system. Our house was built with almost no insulation in the roof over a vaulted ceiling. We had about that much space between the inside of the house and our shingles, R4 maybe, and it's now R50.
Wow.
So we really changed the.
Just
look
from
of
a
the
panel?
house.
Chair, I'll vouch for it. I
We'll bring
drove
the
past the
professional.
home and it's,
Yeah.
they've put a new roof. They're working on their eaves. You could tell they had to raise the profile a little bit.
It was to deal with the fact it was built with no insulation.
It's an excellent solution to a vaulted ceiling roof.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, so SIP panel is basically your plywood followed by, I think yours is like 12 inches? 12 inches of foam and then another layer of plywood, and they're usually 4 feet wide, and then they're as long as you actually have to have them be to meet the roof length. And yeah, it was a great solution, and it made for a great layout here once we get this up.
I'm trying to buy a little time here.
We may need to bring it to the
I can, yeah.
commissioners.
Shall I do that?
That would work, yeah.
I can do
Okay.
that.
Is there, Deb, is there a spot too by your computer?
Hey!
Ta-da, there's the keyboard.
Oh no, that's Deb. That's yours.
You're messing with us.
Yeah, this is the.
That's your keyboard. So if you just lay those on top, there you go. There it is.
Can you guys see
Okay.
that?
So that would be the east side, that's the backyard of the home. And what you see is that indentation along that whole ridge line, or the eave there has been removed. And then you can kind of see, based on this, where almost that old roof line ended, just below that lower edge. And that valley kind of started, exactly, right in there. That's where that valley started. And you can see where that valley has moved out from the roof, just due to adding that SIP panel. So it reduced that valley length and that valley location slightly. And so then, Deb, if you want to maybe put up that new layout. So that is dimensioned roof surface. And so there, we're no longer showing that it's overhanging the valley. And we've accomplished the entire layout that Deb had asked for. We can get
Great.
that sent back with new plans and everything, so.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Allen or the applicant while we've got him up here? No questions? I don't have any questions. I think the new plan looks good, and I will open the public hearing before we discuss that part of it. So if anybody would like to speak to this item, you're welcome to come up and give us your name and address for the record. And seeing nobody, I will close the public hearing and turn it back over to the commission for discussion or a motion.
Chair, I would be open to making a motion. I don't see any nod heads. Okay, so I'd like to move that the planning commission recommend approval to the city council for the conditional use permit for a variation of a solar performance standards of the zoning ordinance subject to the following three conditions stated in our background.
We have a motion and a second.
Third.
And a third, and we'll bring it up for a vote, and we'll see if we get a fourth. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and the motion carries. So that will
This
not,
will
Thank
go
you
to
so
the
much for
city
coming.
council next week on Tuesday night, and will be on their consent agenda, and I'll give you a call. And usually, if the city council hears something from someone, or if they want to pull it off consent agenda, they'll let us know ahead of time. So someone, we can advise people for someone to be there, but I would anticipate that they would just approve it in one quick motion at the beginning of the meeting with a bunch of other minor items.
I'm going to take these from you, Mark.
Not as much drama as the parking lot.
No.
this is more typical of what
Thank
we,
you.
thank you for coming out tonight.
Brian, thanks for coming back to Burnsville.
Yep. thank
Keep
you all.
coming back.
Appreciate it.
Our next item on the agenda this evening is a discussion to consider amendments to Title 10 zoning of the city code to incorporate changes to allow accessory dwelling units within R1 one-family residential and R1A one-family rural residential districts, and to modify the minimum apartment square footage size within micro units. Presenting this evening is Ms. Dean.
Great, thank you, Chair Workman, members of the commission. As you may remember, at the previous Planning Commission meeting on April 9th, we went through some discussion over a draft ordinance, largely modeled after the Egan ordinance, but with some unique Burnsville modifications. Based off of the feedback received at that meeting, you have a revised draft ordinance reflecting those comments within your packet. There's also additional information about Egan's ordinance. There was some question about that as that went through, so you have an attachment also in your background. Again, just as a reminder, this was a directive from the City Council. We went through a governance process, and they asked that the city code be modified to allow accessory dwelling units and micro apartments. So I'm going to discuss the various changes that I made based off of our discussion. We'll start out, there's 6 items or 6 different topics. I'll go through those hopefully quickly. If you have any questions, we can talk through them, but if not, I can move along. So as far as definitions, originally I had them under the accessory dwelling provisions. Since then, I've taken out the definitions from that section and moved them to the general section of the city code. I've clarified the definition of dwelling unit to reflect what's in the building code. And then I've also made a modification to the definition of accessory dwelling unit to indicate that if living space is if it's under the same roof, if it's interior, for example, in a basement, that essentially that's not an accessory dwelling unit. So only those that are attached to the home with a separate unique entrance, meeting building code, or detached, again, meeting building code, are considered ADUs. Again, that interior reference is now eliminated. It's just part of the home. Any questions at all? There was discussion about the maximum floor area, especially in regards to the 20% maximum coverage on a lot. There was a lot of discussion around that Egan's ordinance mentioned a percentage maximum. However, Burnsville does not have a maximum percentage coverage of building square footage unless you're in the shoreland, of course. And it was discussed through the commission that by having a percentage maximum, that might impact the number of single-family homes that could accommodate an accessory dwelling unit. Essentially, many homes may not be able to accommodate that. I removed that requirement, one, because in most cases, we don't have that percentage requirement. In most cases, it's just meet the setback requirements in all of our zoning districts, again, with the exemption of shoreland. I also made modifications to the language. There was some discussion back and forth that just at how it was worded in item number 10. So I've hopefully cleaned that up to meet the planning commissioner's request. And then I did add an item number 5, that the detached accessory dwelling units should not count towards the maximum number of accessory buildings and structures allowed on the property. So currently we allow one accessory structure like a storage shed or a detached garage. You can have a swimming pool, but if someone wanted to build an accessory dwelling unit, we still wanted them to have the ability to have a swimming pool or have a storage shed. So we wanted to make some clarification in the language. So that's new from what you had seen on April 9th. Any questions at all? No? Okay, I'll move on. Design standards. At the Planning Commission's request, I removed the provision that talked about the accessory dwelling extending beyond the height of the primary residence. This was when we looked at the pictures of the very basic pictures of the 3 different examples, and we saw one accessory dwelling unit above a garage. The commission said, that looks, I don't see any issues with that. That seems fine. That seems appropriate. So I eliminated that. I did, however, item number 15 that's listed on your slide, made reference that the accessory dwelling unit, if detached, shall not extend beyond the height of the primary residence. That's new. I don't know if there's any issues from a commission standpoint.
I like that.
Okay.
Seems appropriate.
Okay. Then we'll hopefully keep that as part of a proposed ordinance. The other provision was in regards to exterior doors on the main wall or that main frontage of the house. So we did create a provision that you can have 2 doors on that main wall plane. However, they need to be at least 20 feet apart. The language that I had originally was very subjective, so we cleaned that up to make it a standard that's easy to follow and yet does provide some flexibility to a homeowner if they wanted to have 2 doors on that main front wall. Any questions or concerns or clarification on that?
Mr. Reddick.
Well, we had some discussion by wall, if the front door was here and the accessory was facing a different direction.
Okay.
Is that considered to be the same? It's a different wall?
It's a different wall.
Okay.
That would be a different wall.
Just wanted to.
Same face.
Same face, same wall face. Okay,
Any other questions?
One faces east, one faces south. We're on 2 different walls.
correct. That's correct.
They can be a foot apart
Correct.
if you want.
Correct.
Thank you.
Parking requirements, at the commission's request, I removed the provision that said 2 spaces were required for the accessory dwelling unit and changed that to 1. And then also just simplified the language. You still, if you're on a single family lot, you still do need a 2-car garage minimum for the house. And again, just to really clean up the language, it's saying the same thing, just in a cleaner manner. Are there any issues or any discussion on that point? Occupants and residents. So there was some question about what happens if a couple has a baby. Are they required to move out if the provision says only 2 occupants? After the meeting, staff decided to remove the reference to the number of occupants, that it should just fall under our family definition. It is how staff recommends to proceed. So you could have more than 2 occupants, however, the family definition would be the overriding provision.
That's the family definition that's indicated through like a R1.
The general section of our city code definitions.
Okay.
Any questions or concerns? After the planning commission meeting, we had an overall discussion about, from a staff standpoint, about intensification of land use and if a accessory dwelling unit should trigger park dedication fees or any sewer and water fees. And so based off of staff recommendation, we're suggesting that language be added to capture any park dedication fees, again, because of the intensification of land use. And this would occur at time of building permit. If someone's improving their property, intensifying the property, creating a second unit that's attached to their home, that this would be a trigger. Again, if you're converting your basement for someone to live, that's just part of your home. But if you're adding essentially that second unit, that these fees should be captured. So that's what this language references. Are there any comments or discussion on this?
Is there any question? Anybody? What is the threshold? I guess, is there a sliding scale or is it a flat dedication fee?
Gosh, that's a great question for our Parks Department and our Public Works Director. Do you know, Deb, off the top of your head?
It's a very complicated park dedication fee. It's in the city fee schedule, and that's online. And it's based on the number of people. It's also based on, this would be something comparable to if someone was to come in and had a single family lot and they were going to divide it into 2 lots. You'd pay park dedication on the next lot. So this is by creating an accessory dwelling unit, which is in fact another unit, they're subject to park dedication.
I know we don't have the exact answer here, but is square footage considered into that fee or?
No, I believe it's based on
occupancy.
Occupancy. It's based on the value of the land. And part of that takes some numbers and figures from the Metropolitan Council.
Okay.
The land value is updated each year to a certain percentage.
Sure. I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it. Just for the sake of transparency, if somebody did come in to do this, if they knew what to expect, if there was some type of way to prepare somebody for what that fee might be.
And, Chair Workman, that is something that staff would provide in advance. So, for example, whenever staff meets with the developer interested in just developing any land within the city, they're provided a worksheet that gives an estimated amount of fees one is to expect, whether there's park dedication, sewer and water hookup, any special assessments that might be due. That's and estimate of building permit fees, development application fees. That's something that's provided to an applicant or to somebody inquiring. So that would be part of the communication with the future applicant or future property owner.
All right. Commissioner Bradrick, did you have a comment?
No, I think I've seen somehow I stumbled across that. It's a fairly complicated thing, and if the home initially paid $5,000 in park dedication for an R1, and it's gonna move there, it's not gonna be another $5,000. It's a small increment increased as the lot intensity use went up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a relatively small addition.
Hey.
And then fees would be based off of, the other fees are just, if we've got a hook to sanitary sewer, if we've got a hook to water, that's part of the city
Standard
fee to
building
hook up
fee.
to that utility.
Sure. Okay. So this is very common. I mean, I didn't think it was something out of the ordinary. I just needed to understand it a little bit better.
We just wanted an opportunity to clarify it within this section of the city code so that when somebody is thinking about adding on an accessory dwelling unit, that they do know that this fee would be applicable.
Whether it was here or not, now we know that if it's here, there's no possibility of misunderstanding that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So if there's no additional discussion about accessory dwelling units at this time, I'll move on to micro apartments. Oh, Ram has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Did staff give any consideration regarding that wall that we talked about? You know, if you're gonna have an additional unit, there need to be some separation.
Correct. So if there is the accessory dwelling unit definition under this new ordinance would require a physical fire-rated separation between the two homes.
Great, thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh.
So moving on to micro apartments, some of the code language would reduce the minimum square footage for your mixed use or for your multifamily residential. And the question asked to the Planning Commission at the last meeting was, should there be a performance standard that requires some additional indoor or outdoor amenities? And asked staff to come back with, what do we do today? What's the requirement today? So the current code requirements, we do require that for multifamily or mixed use, that 50% of the site be landscaped in green space or some type of outdoor amenities or combination thereof. We also do require that in our multifamily zoning districts that if they're a greater than half mile from a city park, that they also include some type of recreational facility. And then we do have a provision in our code that talks about allowing a density bonus if indoor or some type of social room is added to the development proposal. So we do have some standards in place. We could require more. We could keep this the same.
Commissioners, do you have any thoughts on?
I think we're covered. I mean, you have done, good work on this, and I don't see what else you're gonna add now, but if other commissioners want to add anything, I'm listening.
I agree with the current code as it's stated
Yep.
today.
Is this pulled from a different high density or medium density code in the?
So this would be applicable to, for example, our high density apartments, condos.
It's mimicking something that we already have well
Correct.
established.
And so it would be applicable today. The question, I think, is, do you want it to be greater? Do you want a special provision or any additional language, or are you satisfied with the current regulations?
We treat it just the same
Since they're
as.
smaller, much smaller units.
Correct. Do you feel that there's a need to add additional space? I think at our last meeting, Deb had described that when some of the cities that have smaller units, St. Paul and Minneapolis, they have other park facilities, trails. You have access to sports, to music, to arts, to restaurants right outside your backyard, outdoor patios, rooftop bars, really at your footsteps. And so our question is, do you feel that additional green space, because we're out in the suburbs and you might not have that at your footsteps, that should additional square footage be added, for example, to a indoor recreational facility, to a social room, above and beyond what we have today?
Chair, would a common room be meted in what you were talking about? A common room for socialization or so? Common area, not necessarily a room.
It could be, and that's something that you could add as a provision. Right now, we talk about outdoor space, outdoor amenities, green space, but we don't really cover, you need to have 1,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet dedicated to yoga room, fitness facility, indoor, racquetball facilities, game room. We just leave it up to the developer to provide.
That's my comfort zone. I mean, I like what we have here.
I'm the same here.
I think the days of, matchbox apartment buildings are probably behind us. At least it seems that way with everything I'm seeing now. That developers are probably yearning to add more amenities than they were maybe 15 or 20 years ago, but I'm okay with it if everyone else is on this.
I am too.
As well.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you. So with that, staff does recommend, it sounds like you're in favor of the proposed changes. So with that, if you're in favor for us to move forward, we'd love to bring you back a draft ordinance at the next planning commission meeting on May 14th. With that, I'm open to a recommendation.
Do you need a motion?
We don't need a motion for this. It's a
I
discussion
think
item.
it's, so you're,
Can I? So you'll bring back just you'll take this and put it, you've wordsmithed this, you've changed it. You'll bring it back to a draft. We'll approve the draft. And then there'll be a public hearing, so there'll be a meeting for that and then a public hearing.
So
And then to the city council?
we'll publish it for a public hearing at
With
the
the
next
draft.
meeting with the
Okay.
draft.
We'll have a public hearing the next time this comes in front of us.
Yes, on May 14th.
Love it.
Great,
Good
thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, we move on to our next item, item number 5, which is updates. Is there any updates from the commission or staff?
You just have your meeting scheduled for next time.
All right.
Also, just for your information, I think that Jenny Faulkner, our Community Development Director, sent out an email to the commissioners about some of the strategic planning the Economic Development Commission is doing, and then also the County Road 42 Burnsville Center study area. Just an update on that. We have received 8 RFQs, requests for qualifications, for that County Road 42 Burnsville Center project. And we're in the process of contacting the ones that, from a staff perspective, we felt did a good job to set up interviews. So that's moving along quickly, and it won't be too long before you'll be involved in that planning process too. So it should be pretty fun and exciting process. Yep.
I saw our mayor was on the cover of St. Paul Minneapolis Business Journal this week, which was pretty cool to see as well. We're leading to the 42 corridor. If there's no other updates, I would stand for a motion for adjournment.
so move.
A motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries. Thanks for joining us tonight, and have a good rest of your evening.